responded to the jobs challenge by pointing to the changing patterns in employment, especially since COVID. And on the all-important announcement of the white paper on economy, she mentioned how Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been thinking about this for a while, particularly to showcase the reasons why we were languishing as the fragile five 10 years ago and what it took to bring India to the top 5 economies of the world. But he did not do it because the faith in India's systems would have been shaken had they revealed the situation before restoring it to health. Remember, the opposition, while in parts welcoming capex increase to 11.11 lakh crores, has turned the budget lackluster and failing in addressing the issues of the public. Now, does that criticism stick? Or has shunning populism robbed the opposition of any real reasons to attack the government? Is this government batting on the front foot with confidence, particularly on the ever-pestering question of economy? We'll take that question to our guests in just a bit. But let me first break down some of the highlights of the exclusive interview with Nirmala Sitharaman with Rahul Joshi, Network Editor-in-Chief, just a short while ago. There are multiple headlines coming out. Headline number 1. She says that India lost 10 glorious years under UPA, a decade under UPA, and the NDA government had to work very hard to restore the economic health of the country. The white paper is needed now to reveal the truth of what went on, why we were in such a bad position, that it was a Herculean task to restore the economy over the last 10 years, that every sector was ridden with issues is what she has reiterated again today. That the Prime Minister favors restoration and stability in policy. Some would say this is visible in the interim budget as well. That there is secularism in action truly now in the scheme implementation by this government over the last 10 years because they have not differentiated between any beneficiary. Achieving 7% growth is not a difficult task, is what the Finance Minister has said. All the critics say India needs more than that to really be in the running with competitors. IMF, World Bank have faith in India's growth story. She went on to say that unemployment has to be seen in context of shift in job patterns and that they have managed reforms even during the very tough economic period of the pandemic. But let me also break down what the criticism from the opposition, the response to the budget has been particularly. So P. Chidambaram, of course, former finance minister, has said that the budget is biased in favor of the rich. Akhilesh Yadav, Samajwadi Party chief, has said that this is BJP's farewell budget. Their record has been shameful. Shashi Tharoor, another Congress MP, has said that this budget is high on rhetoric but low on substance. Atishi, who's a minister in Delhi cabinet, says that this budget proves that this has been a Jumla government. Harsimrat Kaur Badal, Akali MP, once friends, now foes, but sometimes friends still, has gone on to criticize the government by saying that the budget was hollow and that there was specifically nothing for Kisan. Kisan is one of the 4 categories the Narendra Modi government says it focuses on. The big question we ask, though, is this. From shunning populism to bringing about a white paper on its economic policies, is this government batting on the front foot?
Because of the vision with which Prime Minister is committed to serve this country, is actually serving the common people in letter and spirit. So many different sections of our society themselves suggested to us that you better bring a paper out, white paper out, to say why Indian economy has reached the fragile 5. The number of NPAs and the value of the NPAs, meaning what was the original value and to what extent they had reached almost close to valueless positions. The biggest strength under Prime Minister Modi is stability in policy.
Let's go across to our guest joining us. Mahima Singh is spokesperson of the Congress Party. Rashid Kidwai is author and senior journalist. Gautam Chikarmane is VP ORF. And I'll also be joined with Gopal Krishna Agarwal, national spokesperson of the BJP, in just a bit. Mahima Singh, I want to come to you first up because the finance minister spoke to Network 18 just a short while ago, and she was very critical of the state of economy that the UPA left it for the NDA. And now the government feels strong enough to say that we will bring a white paper that will put numbers to paper, and it's going to show to the country the state of the economy in 2013-14 versus what it is now, but particularly to highlight the Herculean task that they had to put together to lift economy from fragile 5 to the top 5. This is an indictment by the Narendra Modi government of what went on under the UPA.
Jai Hind. It is fair enough that the government, and it is, I think, high time that the government brought out white papers on economy, and there are very relevant questions that are hovering for a very, very long time in this Anyay Kal of 10 years that has, ridden this country. I think the finance minister should first answer the question why, they are boasting about IMF, and you just mentioned about that. Why did the IMF have to warn the Indian government in December that India, will cross 100% of general government debt, will cross the GDP, that debt will cross GDP by 2028. Why did that warning come? Why has the gap between the allocations, budget allocations and expenditure been ever so widening over the past 10 years? Why before 2014 the agricultural growth rate was 4.6%, which has now declined to 1.8%? Why the expenditure on education was 4.55% in 2014 and now it is 3.2%? Why the allocation for SC, ST, OBC and minorities is ever so declining over the past 10 years? Same for the defense, same for education and healthcare sector. The allocations have, and the expenditure pertaining to that has declined continuously. And the unemployment today, Shivani, is at a 45-year high. This government has made 3 crore Indians lose their jobs. And I don't know,
I'm sorry, 1 second. Mahima, I'll accept everything else you're saying, but I think this unemployment being at a 45-year-old high, you have to quote the numbers. And I think...
No, it is.
Which number are you quoting?
In fact, our president, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, has questioned through his tweet.
No, madam,
yesterday,
I know the number that you're referring to. That number talked about 2017 figures. That number is from an independent agency. You have to quote those numbers, and we have to be able to put in context the relevance of those numbers. The government denies those numbers.
All right. Let me go ahead.
Yeah.
The household savings, Shivani, the household savings are at a 50-year low. We want to question why is 5% to 18% GST imposed on essential goods like flour, pulses, rice, milk and vegetables. You see, the white paper is essential because we want to know the truth of allocations against MG Narendra.
Okay.
We want to know the truth of ever so declining allocations for women and child development, and the declining expenditure on women and child.
I get your point, and I'll take that to Gopal Krishna Agarwal, who's joining us. But ma'am, the question I asked you was this: the finance minister's import, and this is something the Prime Minister has said on the floor of the House earlier, and in an exclusive interview to Network 18 earlier, that the state of economy that the UPA left it in, with NPAs burgeoning, with as the finance minister, ma'am, let me finish please, with the banks becoming black holes, with those oil bonds and the cost to the exchequer never being fully revealed, the burdens that were imposed on the economy, while we could have done so much better in those 10 years, we struggled and it was left in tatters. Please respond to that.
Let's talk about electoral bonds. When you talk about oil bonds, which the government talks. You see, let's talk about electoral bonds. Let's talk about the opaque schemes that this government has brought.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I'm having to interrupt you. I cannot have the debate deviate to electoral bonds. Let's talk about the economy.
Not at all deviating. when we are talking about the movement of money, you will have to talk about the opaque ways in this government has trailed the money deviated
Party
the
funding
course
is
of
not what I'm discussing.
economy.
Ma'am, please, Mahima Singh,
Beyond
party
the
funding
numbers.
is not what I'm discussing. Please focus on the economy.
You see, I bit by bit, I exposed the claims this government has made on the floor yesterday, and when they bring out the white papers, it will be essential to answer all these questions.
Okay.
I have compared data, few of the huge fallouts this government has had over the past 10 years. I've just mentioned few of those, and I think when the white papers come out, there are essential plethora of questions that ought to be answered by the government.
Okay, the Congress is fine enough with the white paper, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, they welcome it. It's an exercise that ideally every government should do after 5 years. This government has had continuation of 10 years. It is confident enough to do so, fair enough. But let the white paper come and let the public see it before you make judgment and evaluation over it.
Yeah, Shivani ji, we should ask if they are so confident and they want the white paper that every government should have brought it. They should have brought it before 2014. The only one figure I'll quote, when in 2014 Indian economy was classified under the fragile 5. The inflation was in double digit. The corruption was at its peak. The benefit people were getting without direct benefit transferred to their bank account was getting transferred to their own party workers and the people who were their beneficiaries, not the actual targeted beneficiaries. One figure also I'll quote, that between 2006 to 2012, when the UPA government was in power, there was phone banking, and about the outstanding loan between 2006 to 2016, the 2016 the loan outstanding loan went from went to about 58 lakh crores outstanding loan, and the maximum NPAs arose from that amount outstanding loan. In within 6-7 years, multiple times outstanding loan from the banks went up, and that was there was no quality check on the bank. It was the minister who were calling the shots and calling on the phone, give this XYZ a loan, and without any checking of what is the project, how it will be repaid, what is the collateral security, all these loans, and that was the reason that our banks were in a very bad situation. So economy was a fragile 5, inflation was at its peak, the sentiment about the country was lowest, there was indecisiveness at the Prime Minister level. Globally, India was considered to be in a very bad economic situation.
Can I come in now?
Gopal Krishna Agarwal, highly undercapitalized.
Gopal Krishna Agarwal, at the same time, the criticism is that while the current government projects everything as absolutely hunky-dory, the reality on the ground and on the streets is different. Why does the government also not acknowledge there are certain issues that persist? I am not going to harp on the evergreen issue of inflation. I think on inflation, the government's record is pretty decent despite upheavals globally and otherwise. But for example, unemployment and jobs, the distress that has been caused to the public and to how much we have been able to recover that are real questions.
Yeah, Shivani ji, I'll come to this question alone. We never shy from acknowledging the challenges. If we are shy from acknowledging the challenges, how we are working for them? If the finance minister says that we are spending 11 lakh crores on infrastructure, we are spending a lot more money on the railway corridor for the industries, PLI, all these mudra loan, then self-help groups, women empowerment, Vishwakarma, Vishwakarma Yojana to help the small businesses, 18 small businesses like small businesses, the cooperative sector is being helped. So the challenge of the economy for creating employment is definitely in our side.
Okay.
How do you tackle this?
Yes.
FML said you cannot give a government job to everybody. There are 10 lakh jobs vacant, and this vacancy of jobs is not from our side. It was in 2010, the UPA government stopped recruiting people in the government departments and PSUs.
Okay, all right.
And it has accumulated now 10 lakh jobs and we
Allow
are
me to
filling that.
continue, please, Shivani.
One second, ma'am. Two of our guests have not spoken. No, one
Yeah.
second. On unemployment, I'll come back to our political guests. Two of our guests have not spoken. Gautam Chikraman, I want to come to you. Do you see this as a sign of extreme confidence and also a slightly political move to bring in this white paper, where on one aspect the government is very clear about what it has done and what it has been able to achieve over the last 10 years? On another
Shivani,
aspect,
white paper doesn't say only goody things. It will
Acha.
talk about the past issue, how we have come out to this.
that's what I'm saying. That is where the political angle is. Gopalji, be patient. I get your point, but let Gautam come in on this. The fact
but
that they want to
political
compare,
angle
one
is
second,
if
the
you are
fact that they
talking
want to
good economics-
compare it to the last 10 years, it is also to shine a light before an election that look how bad it was in 2014 and look how we have recovered from that. This finance minister is stating that intent. It's not something I am making up. But Gautam, how do you read this? Gopalji, please, 1 second.
Firstly, I don't know how many people will actually read that white paper other than 17 and a half analysts, in India and maybe 3 and 4 abroad.
I think they will table this in Parliament. Gautam, I think they'll table this in Parliament and there will be a debate in Parliament.
Of course they will. I'm just wondering how many will sit down and read it.
Right.
But
The
having said
global
that,
investors
it's
invest
the
on-
fact that... You want me to continue?
Yes, go ahead. Please. I request everybody else to please patiently listen. He's waited for his turn. Gautam.
Yeah. So I don't think people vote on the basis of white papers or claims. I think they vote on ground realities that may or may not be in sync with the economy. In fact, in our discussion yesterday, I was wondering, how is it that does good economics translate into good politics?
Right.
The answer so far has been no, except for the second term of Narendra Modi. Because in 1996, when after a spectacular reforms journey that began with the Statement of Industrial Policy in 1991, and when the Indian economy opened up, Congress lost. In 2004, after a spectacular rise in infrastructure, overall well-being, BJP government lost. And so I'm not really sure whether good economics is equal to good politics.
So what changed? But what changed? Sorry, you said barring Narendra Modi's second term, good
That's right. The
economics has
second
never been
term
good
was
policy.
based on a good economic policy.
So what changed then?
Pardon, ma'am?
So what changed then? How come Narendra Modi was able to buck that trend?
Yeah, I have some speculations, though I'm not a political person, but my speculations are that apart from an overall jazzed up big picture, I think the first term of Narendra Modi and the continuing current term has brought benefits directly into households, directly into toilets, directly into homes, into toilets, into Jan Dhan, into bank accounts, into direct benefit transfers. So money is now moving for all the schemes that have been in existence for the past 75 years directly into the bank accounts of the various people. And this is particularly noteworthy for women. And so far women were not deprived, but there was a friction, there was a cost that they had to incur to get that money. Now it's going straight into their bank account. So I think healthcare, the number of schemes, the number of touch points that the NDA government from 2014 till today has been able to reach individual households. I have not seen such a political economy before.
Right.
So maybe good economics, good policy may turn out to be
Good politics as well.
Good political outcomes as well. That's
Rashid
how
Bhai, in fact, Nirmala Sitharaman has touched upon this in her interview today to us, but also in her speech yesterday, that the saturation model, the fact that the government is able to saturate the length and breadth of the country with the benefits that are intended for the public is true secularism in action. Because they, one, don't differentiate between who the beneficiaries are, and secondly, it is actually reaching the public. Unlike schemes being on paper, what she called it, outlays versus outcomes focus. Is this the reason why the Narendra Modi government is on the front foot when it comes to economy? Because economy is an evergreen subject, inflation is an evergreen subject, jobs is an evergreen subject. No matter where an election is fought when, these issues are always discussed. But this government seems confident on these issues.
Yeah, Shivani, I wish I could say yes to your question. As Gautam ji was saying, you see, it is in India, it is politics that dominates over economy. Both sides, Congress and opposition, Congress in opposition or BJP opposition, almost, marshal the same set of arguments about everything. What is the qualitative difference between Narendra Modi government and previous Dr. Manmohan Singh government? Manmohan Singh government also had a lot of welfareism. But in Mr. Modi and in the current NDA, there is a golden triangle of a decisive leadership, welfareism, and plus this cultural and muscular nationalism. So people are, even when they are facing economic hardship in many matters, in this case of glass being half full or half empty, people have, something to look forward to. And that is where I think the Congress is lacking, because the Congress is criticizing a lot. But Congress does not have a positive agenda. And
or an alternative.
Making a decisive difference.
But I take your point, Rashid Gidwai. I'll let Gopal respond to that. But would it be fair to say that people are distressed, but they just don't care because of Mandir? Is that also not, a little bit frivolous to suggest? Because ultimately the public votes, like Gautam was saying, maybe not on a white paper either, but they're not going to vote only on sentiment alone. They're going to vote on whether their lives are becoming better, not better, could become better. Yes, hope is also a factor. So is it fair to say that while the public is in large distress, but somehow they're still voting for Modi?
No, I think, Shivani, you kind of misread by this thing. What I'm saying is half the people are happy, half are not happy. I find this whole thing problematic in the sense when we say that the government is, feeding 80 crore people. We are capable of doing it. It's very welcoming. At the same time, 80 crore is a very big volume when people are getting subsidized food. It is a bit problematic. But
Yes.
this is the right point. But what I'm saying is, Mr. Modi has been able to, and the BJP and Nirmala ji and everyone else is being able to package it very well. And UPA lacked that kind of packaging. So that's why they lost. That's why the Congress and the entire opposition is not in contention now for power.
Gopal ji, please respond. Packaging but not substance.
No, Shivani, I tell you, because good economics in good politics is the relation that we have been able to establish. I'll tell you one thing. It was a large budget before this election. There was every pressure and everywhere everybody was thinking that government will come out with a populist budget. But Prime Minister Modi ji and Nirmala ji stuck to the issue of good economics. One example I give you about the capital expenditure they have increased. Second is the fiscal consolidation glide path roadmap. We have achieved, we had targeted 5.9% to the fiscal deficit to GDP ratio. It has come down for the last year to 5.8 and for the current year it is targeted to 5.1%. This only figure gives a lot of confidence to the people that we consider economics an important part. Second is that it is not only the economy which is growing, it is also the welfare also is going. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, where we have achieved a target of 3 crore houses, the target has been increased to 5 crore. Additional 2 crore houses will be given. Same way Ayushman Bharat, the Anganwadi workers, the Asha workers have been included into the Ayushman Bharat scheme. So the thing is rooftop, 300 units of free electricity, and it's not only just giving free electricity. The issue of free electricity with rooftop solar energy creates a green energy also.
I understand.
Talks about
no, those are announcements in this budget
of the country and creates a capital expenditure.
I get what you're saying. It's a healthy way to give incentives to the public instead of just announcing free electricity units.
At the same time, create economic growth for the country.
Okay.
Consider fiscal
surely this budget is not what is giving you confidence. It is the track record over the last 9.5 years. I've got just about a minute left. I'll give it to Mahima ji. Mahima ji, is the Congress failing in providing an alternative but is harping on criticism alone? And is that what is creating a problem? You must present an alternative vision to the country, economically.
If that was,
They should
if that
have,
was
then
the
only
case,
they will
Shivani,
present. If they don't have, what
you
they
see,
will
the
present?
BJP wants to eat up on everybody. If the BJP wants to eat up on everybody's time, they want to give their logics and
Oh,
they don't
you
want to,
started, you
hear the.
spoke for 10 minutes,
You
15 minutes
see, he
at a
was talking
length.
about 10 lakh vacancies earlier. The BJP spokesperson talked about 10 lakh vacancies. He talked about the NPAs.
And
When
we
you
have
say the
under
No,
the
no,
Congress is
mission
Gopalji,
board, we
not
have
like
about
this.
negative
Gopalji, not
negative
like this. I've got
you
30
see,
seconds left now for
you
Maima.
see,
Maima only, please. Yes, Maima.
he fears
Alternative
the
vision.
truth would come out. You see, negative perspective is when the BJP says that we have not fulfilled 10 lakh vacancies in 10 years because the UPA stopped admitting people against those vacancies. That is negative perspective. Negative perspective is when the BJP spokesperson does not
We
talk
have
about
failed.
the 12 lakh crore write-off of the bad loans but only talks about the NPAs 10 years ago under UPA's rules. You see, a bad perspective is when they do not admit that 2014 we were at 8th rank globally as an economy, and now in the 10 years they have not been able to, they've only brought us to the 5th. In 70 years we brought
Fragile
ourselves to 8th. And in 10 years, they've brought us to 5th, and
Okay.
now they say we have
I've
not been
got to
able to
wrap.
double agriculture. They've not been able to double farmers' income. They've not been able to provide houses to all till 2022. They've not been able to fulfill the promises they made. And
Okay.
here they are. Cursing the UPA rule and not giving their
Yeah,
own
but you didn't take the opportunity
This
to
is the
provide
negative
me
perspective.
the India alternative vision either in that 1 minute. That's the question that I was asking
It
you.
is very much out there. It is
It's out
very
there.
much out
Okay.
there.
Out
And
there.
I
People
think-
will
and I
read
think,
about it. I've run out of time.
I think Karnataka, Himachal, where we won elections, we have
Will
won
be a
elections
model.
on
Okay.
guarantees we've given and we are fulfilling them.
Okay, guarantees is the one word I hear. I
Unlike
take
the
that.
BJP.
I've run out of
Unlike the
time. I do
BJP
thank
only-
all of our guests for joining us. Coming up on the other side, we take on the big question that is being debated these days. Why do Kashi, Mathura, Ayodhya matter? And why is it important to rebuild temples exactly at these sites? Are we in a civilizational quest? I decode that with Sanjeev Sanyal, author and historian, in an exclusive conversation coming up in just a bit.
Co-powered by
Let's say, the revving pedal, the accelerator during COVID, even as we are managing COVID, we will have to attend to reforms and continue doing the reforms. The Atmanirbhar Bharat announcements were all infused with so much of reform measures. Otherwise, we wouldn't have eliminated more than 68,000 rules, which were just so archaic and were becoming instruments for rent-seeking people. So, systemic reforms have continued. Whether it was pre-COVID, GST and IBC, together with very many other reforms like professionalizing public sector banks and so on, the emphasis on reform has given us adequate rewards and we'll continue doing that. That is why even in the budget, we have emphasized on transparency. We have emphasized on getting everything on board the budget process itself, rather than keeping it outside of the budget or underneath the carpet. These are not small steps, and that has been consistently done in the last 4-5 years. And before that, as I said, IBC or banking reforms, the 5 major recognition R's, as we say, of the problem. So to list it, there are so many, some small, some very big. The small ones having very big implication in making the economy much more cleaner and open and transparent. The bigger ones which are bearing results in terms of the money that you collect in GST. These are not small steps. So that is the one which I would play as important indicators which rating agencies should look at comprehensively, rather than look at just one detail here, one detail there. Macroeconomic stability is also very well kept up.
Nirmala ji, thank you very much once again for giving us this exclusive, very special interview like every year after the budget. Through our News18 network, through CNBC, CNBC Awaz, CNN News 18, you will be able to reach every nook and corner of the country, and investors are glued into moneycontrol.com, tracking every twist and turn of the budget. Thank you so much. My first question, a somewhat obvious question, no SOPs, no populist measures. Even in 2019 interim budget, the government had announced some SOPs, like tax rebates. There were some announcements for the farmers, but none this time. Seems like a very confident Prime Minister going into 2024 elections. You've never looked more relaxed to me before. What was going on in your mind while drafting this?
Well, thank you for having me after the budget, like every year. It's a great opportunity to talk to your viewers and also for others who are watching this program more with keenness to know about the Indian economy. Yes, the budget yesterday did not have any SOPs announced. We treated it like a true vote on account, an interim budget before an election, and also an interim budget which is being presented with the clear understanding that the several programs which were launched with empowerment of citizens in mind over the last 10 years are reaching the ground, and the beneficiaries are already on their own speaking about it. The power of word of mouth is very strong. So when a beneficiary gets truly the benefit and without any middlemen playing a role in it, they really understand that the intent of the government is what they've said is what is getting executed. So I place a lot of trust in the word of mouth, which has helped in schemes like Ujjwala, PM Awas Yojana, PM Mudra Yojana, Swanidhi Yojana, all of which have benefited the small households, small people who want to do their business and who don't have money to give for collateral, no properties to give. So this government has actually, because of the vision with which Prime Minister is committed to serve this country, is actually serving the common people in letter and spirit. And that is recognized by the people themselves. It's not as if you're saying and you're showing target numbers, you're showing achievement numbers. No, the people in the ground are saying about it. I've got it. And so is my neighbor, so is the neighbor of that household, and so on. So, and that is why I have used an expression, and I mean it when I've said it, that this is secularism in action. This is where we have not shown any difference between members belonging to this community or that community, this religion or that religion, or somebody's relative and not relative. No difference. The project reaches the ground for everybody who deserves to get it. And if they are eligible, they get it, irrespective of who they are. And therefore, in every way, the principle of empowerment, the Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Vikas, has been executed in every way. And that is the sense of confidence that the blessings of the people are not just at the time when we gave promise.
After the euphoria of the Pran Pratishtha in Ayodhya at the Ram Temple, a lot of the attention has shifted to Kashi and Mathura. Cases are ongoing in court, particularly in the case of Kashi Vishwanath. There is a lot of steam that these cases have picked up. Recently, puja has been re-allowed in the Tehkhana of the Vyas Ji in Kashi Vishwanath corridor, or that entire area that currently comes under the mosque. With that, there are a lot of questions emerging on what do these fights really mean, the fights to reclaim these temple sites, and where will it go. I'm joined by none other than historian and author Sanjeev Sanyal joining me. Sanjeev, a lot of things going on, but I want to first touch upon the Pran Pratishtha itself. There's been a lot of criticism, particularly because of the role that the Prime Minister played in the Pran Pratishtha, that India has deviated from the path that it was supposed to take post-independence, particularly the path that Nehru envisaged, and we are no longer the democracy that we were supposed to be. How would you respond to that criticism? What do you make of that?
First of all, let me say that India is a civilizational nation of long standing. I mean, we had a sense of ourselves for a very long time. You go back to the Puranas, it clearly mentions the people who live south of the Himalayas and north of the oceans are the Bharatiyas. So, the idea that we suddenly in 1947 suddenly ended up with a sense of ourselves and a nation is completely wrong. The Republic of India may be a modern construct, but the civilizational nation is a very old one. In fact, even Nehru, in his Independence Day speech, says the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. So, even he accepted that there was a nation that pre-existed and had been suppressed for a long time, right? Now, having established this republic, the fact is that, first of all, Nehru is only one of many people who were responsible for giving us our freedom and in establishing this republic and providing principles. It is not as if this nation came into being in order to somehow live out the fantasies of one person, right? There are many others who played an important role in giving us, in building the Indian Republic. And there are also the ideas of India predating over thousands of years, which we have also inherited. Now, we need to be true to all of this. And at the point of independence, there were many people who felt that there needed to be a link back to the past, which is why our constitutional starts with India, that is Bharat, and it has all those sketches all through, which clearly link us back to our past. In addition to that, there was a feeling that this nation long suppressed was finding utterance. So, one of the first things we did after having become independent was do what? We rebuilt the Somnath temple. Now, just because Nehru personally did not like it does not mean that the rest of us are somehow bound by that vision of India. Other people also had other visions of India, including the then President
and the Home Minister.
And the Home Minister and many others. So, the point I am making is that there are other visions of India. We are not somehow beholden to one vision of India, specifically that of Nehru.
And this criticism is particularly on the point of view of secularism, that somehow secularism in India has come under danger.
I think the problem is that we have to understand what you mean by secularism. See, the term secularism has come to mean in some way that the Hindus specifically must give up their aspirations in pursuit of some sort of a utopia where Hindu identity must be always put aside for other, it could be other religions or it could be other ideologies, and consequently there was almost a feeling that secularism basically means that, if I might put it, an anti-Hindu sentiment.
Yes.
Now, that is not necessarily how you need to think about it. There is another way of thinking about about secularism, of thinking of it in terms of pluralism. I.e., there are many different ways of worshipping the divine, and that is there, by the way, in the very foundation of our civilization. So, if we read the Rig Veda and the very last chant of the Rig Veda, what happens there? It basically says, come together, sit together, let us all be of one accord, let us sit around the sacrificial fire, let all the ancient gods be given a space around the fire. So, at the point when Indian civilization was being founded by the Bharata tribe after the Battle of 10 Kings, what are they doing? They are giving space to all the gods, including those of the defeated tribes, including those tribes they may not have even met yet. So, setting in motion a system of assimilation rather than imposition. But in here is inherent an idea of mutual respect, i.e., when a god is given his rightful place around the sacrificial fire, all the worshippers of that god also accept all the other gods.
Right.
Right. So, wait. Now, in this thinking, there has to be a conception of mutual respect.
Sure.
Right. And in there is also therefore the idea that if something is exceptionally sacred to particular traditions, then others too should respect that fact, especially since there is more than adequate evidence that these sacred sites, in this case those of Ayodhya, Kashi and Mathura, they were violently taken away and destroyed, right? There is more than adequate evidence. I mean, Ayodhya, of course, the courts have already spoken on this matter. But even on the other two, there is piles of evidence. Aurangzeb's Varmans, people who have witnessed it, and of course the archaeology, which is even today there. So these are not debated matters. So if they are so sacred, then I think it's fair that those who consider those particular spots being sacred are given, special access to it and allowed to rebuild their temples.
So I was going to come to this question only, that, a lot of time this question is asked that, why is rebuilding a temple exactly here so important? And why is it taken almost as a civilizational quest, as if the balance is not going to be restored unless this is achieved. And of course, this is a long, centuries old quest that is ongoing, if not a struggle or a fight. Why is it? Why do these temples matter so much, and why is it necessary to rebuild exactly on these sites?
Because these specific sites have some value. After all, there is some specific value to the site of Mecca and Kaaba. There is some specific value to the site in Jerusalem. There is a specific value to the Vatican. So it's not surprising that the Hindus too, given that they consider the landscape of India as a sacred geography, and they have certain spots in that geography which they consider to be sacred, that they should be allowed to, celebrate their faith, their ideas, beliefs, etc. in those spots, because each one of those spots, Ram was believed by the Hindus to have been born at that spot, not in any other spot, but in that spot. Same thing is true of Krishna Janmabhoomi, and of course in the case of the Kashi Vishwanath temple, that spot is sacred because of its association with Lord Shiva. So there is something sacred about those spots. This is also true of, by the way, the Shakti Peeths as well. So the point I'm making is that there is more than adequate evidence that these sites were violently taken away.
Over. Yes.
Yeah, and for a very long time, Hindus preserved this memory. Even those who destroyed them preserved the memory because they were quite proud of what they had done. So it's not like there is a dispute about what happened. Now, I think it's fair that it is returned to those to whom it rightfully believes,
and why
belongs to.
And why is it that it is projected very key to Indian civilization and the preservation of that civilization?
Well, because the fact is, as I said, we have for a very, very long time had a clear sense of ourselves, and not just us, other peoples also recognized that we had this sense of ourselves. So, others use the words Indians or Al-Hind or whatever other term. They had a clear sense that there are people, they have a shared social, religious and other beliefs and practices. And of course, the people of India themselves celebrated it in the network of pilgrimages and various other shared frameworks that they had. Now, this civilizational framework did come under enormous attack, and that is also recorded. And those who were attacking it were quite conscious of what they were doing. So they did target those nodes of this civilization which were considered sacred. I mean, it's not like they were randomly going and attacking things. They were specifically targeting certain places and said so in their texts.
And multiple times.
And multiple times. And of course, those people, and these sites were being also rebuilt. Yes. So the fact is, the Kashi Vishwanath, for example, it mattered obviously that it was destroyed and rebuilt. And even before Ahilya Bai, it had been rebuilt many times.
Yes.
And even after it was rebuilt by Ahilyabai, you have somebody like Ranjit Singh sending gold for the Shikhar. So there is a certain association we have. It's a symbol of our civilizational nation. Just like the parliament is a symbol of our republic. If it is torn down for whatever reason, we will rebuild it. And
isn't it remarkable, this particular strength of our civilization, that despite these sites being under attack since the 12th century and many of them being attacked multiple times, they've been rebuilt multiple times at that same spot with whatever limited resources people had at that time. Do you see any parallels to this anywhere else in the world, or is the Indian civilization really unique in this, in preserving this memory?
Well, certainly the fact that as an ancient Bronze Age civilization, we don't see the same kind of commitment to the continuity of the civilization pretty much anywhere else in the world. After all, where are the Egyptians rebuilding the temple of Horus? Where are the Romans rebuilding the temple of Jupiter? And the Greeks rebuilding the temple to Athena? So we alone, in that sense, have retained this strong commitment to our civilization. Having said that, some similar kind of idea does exist in others too. There is, after all, among the Jews, for example, this idea about a homeland and of a temple that was there on a site, which is in fact the source of a lot of friction there as well. And so there are other civilizations that do have similar ideas. The Iranians may have changed their religion, but they do have a very strong sense of a ancient civilization, going back all the way to Khurush the Great. And the Chinese have a similar sense of themselves. One can debate whether Confucianism is a religion or not, but it still to this day informs a lot of the way that things see the world in terms of their in terms of their hierarchical view of the world. A lot of it derives from Confucian thought. Then, of course, the Japanese, where they have a living embodiment of their civilization in their emperor. So we are not entirely unique, but I can say that we can claim that we have maintained this strong continuity and willingness to sacrifice enormously in order for preserving this civilization, and it is very explicit, by the way. So, for example, when you have in the medieval period, Mewar explicitly states that the king of Mewar is Shiva himself in the form of Eklingji. So the rulers of Mewar call themselves the Ranas, or the prime ministers or custodians of Eklingji. So they were representative and ruling Mewar as representatives of Eklingji. And consequently, they could never surrender because Shiva can never surrender. You see, and that's the basis of Mewar's resistance, continuous resistance with extreme losses. I mean, 3 Johars in Chittor alone. So this idea is a very powerful one, and our ancestors embodied it in various ways. As in the specific case of Mewar, it was embodied in the temple of Eklingji.
But this civilizational memory, the sacrifice that you talk about, the willingness to sacrifice, it continues to be a battle cry even today. And there is criticism that it is somehow used politically to suggest that our civilization is under danger or Hindus are under danger, and therefore we are constantly at war. Are we constantly at war? Are we constantly under attack, our civilization?
Well, I can't comment for what politicians may want to say. All I will say is that given our long history and the fact that we were indeed attacked many, many times and occupied as a country several times, and by the way, we don't only have to go back to the 12th century. You can go a long way back. I mean, we were invaded by the Huns, the Greek Macedonians, and by the Sakas, and so on and so forth. So, we have a long history of invasion. The Portuguese and the Goa Inquisition should not be forgotten. So there are many, many attempts. Now, some of those cases we absorbed them into our civilization, And in some cases, there was a clear attempt to undermine our civilization. So, for example, there were Christians in India before the Portuguese came. They were very much a part of our culture, but it was quite different when the Portuguese turned up and did the Goa Inquisition. So, what I'm trying to say, you've got to be, it's not to be seen purely in religious terms. There are enough assimilation and exchange. There are many ideas that are today in Hinduism which may be of foreign origin. I mean, for example, the specific way in which we build temples today may have a Greek origin. If you go back to Vedic times, first of all, much of it was around fire sacrifices, not formal temples. And there were shrines. So there is an old tradition of building shrines, which is quite ancient. But there would typically be a small shrine underneath a tree or something like that. The kinds of sort of Gram Devta kind of smaller shrines that we build. The idea of building a grander temples starts around about 2nd century BC or thereabouts, and or even maybe a little bit earlier. And it's possible we were influenced by the Greeks on this. There are many other ideas we have absorbed from others. There are monotheistic strains in Hinduism today which may have derived some of their ideas from the Abrahamic religions, and so on and so forth. And we have imbibed many other things along the way, I'm sure, from Christianity, from others. So I'm not making the case that we are some sort of a pure civilization. And along the way, we have absorbed many things that
in fact, that is our strength.
That is our strength.
That's
so I am
not
an advocate of a purist idea of India, nor is it that we must always hark back to some pure period that may have existed in the beginning. That is not the case. We are an evolving religion, and along the way we have picked up many things. And when we are talking about civilization, also remember that while there is obvious strong Hindu roots to it, there are many parts of it, others who have come and added to this. So if you talk about Indian civilization today, you have to accept that our food, for example, includes tomatoes and potatoes and all kinds of other things. The language I'm speaking to you in is also a foreign language, but we have now basically absorbed it. So there are many good things also we have absorbed, but the point I'm making to you is just because we have absorbed so many things from outside, and many of them are good things, does not mean that we therefore must celebrate our own subjugation. So it is entirely possible to think of the Taj Mahal as a beautiful building, or the Victoria Memorial as a beautiful building, and not be wildly keen on the British Raj.
Or the Islamic rule.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, one of the debates that's really kicking in right now, post Ayodhya, given what's happening in Kashi and Mathura, and because of certain statements that have been made, is that where do you stop and how far back do you go? So first question that is possibly upon us again, it has been pondered upon many times, is that where do you stop? Do you stop just at these most sacred sites, which are Ayodhya, Kashi, Mathura, maybe one or two more? Or, as some estimates say, there are 30,000, 40,000 temples destroyed over a period of time, and as many as one can claim, individuals can fight those cases must go on. What is your view on that? 3 or 30,000?
So it is, of course, a tricky issue. I am not in favor that we need to create a situation that every single shrine and then have a dispute over them. It is quite clear to me that at least the most sacred sites should be returned, especially if there is clear evidence. But getting into a situation where every single shrine is disputed will become very messy, and I think unnecessary as well. So is there a black and white answer to this? No. What do I think should happen? I think it should just evolve along the way. What will happen is that the more obvious sites, the more sacred sites will have greater public support, and let it make its way through the courts. Our courts are not easy things to navigate. So presumably the ones that are better cases will eventually win over. So I I'm okay for there to be certain amount of legal friction to this process, because then it will over time evolve to a whatever is a new equilibrium, or whatever you may want to call. So the 3, 4 or maybe a few more of the obvious bigger sites should be returned, and I don't think they should be that should be in any way stopped. But for the 30,000 sites, I will be more careful about that.
But even for these 3, 4, 5 very, very key sites, there is still an insistence. For example, despite the ASI reporting.
So let the process happen. If you see, even for Ram Janmabhoomi, it took decades and the process happened. Now, in the case of Kashi and Mathura, the evidence is black and white.
But there is an unwillingness to accept that evidence.
Maybe, but as I said, let it go through the court system. I'm very clear that a properly legal, constitutionally based system should be used for all of
but
this.
Sanjeev, the point
and
is,
it will take time. Let the evidence be put forward.
There is no other way. It will have to be a legal
so
process. But my point is that even in the case of Ram Janmabhoomi, for example, there are still people who cause consternation by suggesting that some injustice was done there to Muslims. And similarly, even in Kashi and Mathura, despite more obvious evidence being available actually than Ayodhya, there is this insistence to not even agree that a temple was destroyed.
Look,
the most basic fundamental aspect of
this
this
there will
conflict.
always be people who will argue either which way. I'm sure there is somebody who will still be saying, oh no, let's build a hospital there or something like that. So, this kind of debate can go on forever. My view is, look, there is a process of doing this. Let's go through that process. Let the evidence be put forward, and let the courts and of course more generally the public and I think there is a sense of reasonableness about this at some deep level. There will always be extremes, by the way, on all sides.
On all sides, yes.
Yeah. So I think, as happened with Ram Janmabhoomi, ultimately even most Muslims also accepted it and even celebrated it. I know several Muslims who said it was a good thing. So the same thing will happen here as well. There are plenty of Muslims, even in Varanasi, who think that the Gyanvapi temple should be returned. And the same thing is true of Mathura. And I think that process should happen. And I think there is also something to be said about going through the struggle to build these things. Because in some ways, if you get it too easily, in my view, our attachment to these monuments will not be the same. After all, to some extent, the building of Ram Janmabhoomi is such a big deal, partly because we have
the struggle involved.
Of the struggle involved. So I think this is, it's important to put in that effort in a world of nihilism and irreligiosity, which, for example, is there in much of the West. India is quite unique in that younger, even more educated people tend to in fact be much more religious in the sense of being proud of their civilization and so on. So this would not have happened if we hadn't gone through this process of struggle to build this temple.
You're right about one thing, that it's a very unique thing we are witnessing about the younger generation as well. Because, when I talk about these temple movements, you see even agnostic and atheist Hindus, for example, being very, very clear about the civilizational context of the fight that they represent. And we are witnessing that, for example, in the younger generation that you talked about. You don't really have to be a devout Hindu to care for these sites, which is a very unique aspect as far as this struggle is
Absolutely, and that's why I keep using the word civilization. Hinduism is not a religion in the sense that Abrahamic religions are.
I'll end on that note. Sanjeev Sanyal, thanks a lot for speaking to us. Of course, we'll have to wait and see where this quest goes and whether it's going to involve more struggles as Ram Janmabhoomi has seen, or could it actually be more reconciliatory as some suggest. Thanks a lot for watching.
Viewers, Look at the picture on your left, in the middle of the screen. It's a point of inflection in the long-running tussle for possession of the Gyanvapi complex site. After 31 years, the Varanasi local court awarded Hindus the right to conduct daily pooja in the south cellar of the Gyanvapi Mosque. The pooja is not open to the general public. The cellar called the Vyas Tehkhana was once open to all. The reason there is a restriction is because the court is aware that if masses throng, there might be propensity for heartburn, and therefore, viewers, it might lead to social tension. So only the family, the Vyas family, priests for generations, are to conduct the puja. For some reason, some such as appeasement, the cellar was locked down by the Mulayam Singh administration in 1993. The Muslim side is upset with the Varanasi court and approached the High Court in an unsuccessful bid to halt the puja, which they believe is insightful. While the court dismissed their arguments, it is worth reminding our viewers of the grounds on which the Muslim side wanted an interim stay on the puja. They said that no evidence that a mandir was demolished to build a mosque. Let me draw them up on your screens, viewers. Those are the points. Islam does not allow the seizing of land to build mosques, and therefore, at some level, because the ground is kosher, the mosque is quite clearly, viewers, at least in their view, legitimate. Varanasi District Court, they say, has taken a hasty decision by allowing the prayers.